everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this last plenary session, Institutionalizing CAMCA in Greater Central Asia. Actually, the previous session, Eric Brown really gave us a great commercial for the importance of institutionalizing the region in the AI session. So again, it's my duty here to try as best I can to channel Dr. Fred Starr, who is going to be chairing this panel. I'm going to be doing dual duty, both moderating and also speaking a bit. And it's my great pleasure to introduce our two speakers. We also have 3 papers that accompany this session. So you can find these papers on the agenda page if you scroll down. And also, as you're leaving, when you pick up your goodie bag, you can also, we have some hard copies of the 3 papers. So we have Dr. Sanat Kushkumbayev, Chief Research Fellow of the Kazakhstan Institute for Strategic Studies, and Ambassador Chimguundari Navaan-Yunden, the Ambassador at Large and Director of the Preparatory Office of the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, COP17, and also CAMCA Network Fellow from Mongolia. So I was given strict instructions from Fred to make sure that we cover the remarks in the intro here that he definitely wanted covered. So I'm going to do my best impression here as I can. A quiet transformation is unfolding across the region, a shift from informal cooperation towards real structure of regionalism. And the key message I want to underscore today is this. After years of discussion and experimentation, it is actually happening. We see evidence in the 3 papers that are going to be anchoring the discussion. Dr. Sanat Kushkumbayev's paper, Gone But Not Forgotten, reminding us that Central Asia regionalism has far deeper and more sustained roots than many recognize. After years of being systematically suppressed by our friends to the north, the history of the Central Asia Union of the 1990s is finally being told, and current actions by regional governments build on these important foundations. And the new paper by Ambassador Chimguundari and Tuvshin Gantulga on Mongolia's pivot to Central Asia and the Caucasus illustrates how the region is expanding and Mongolia's active engagement signaling an evolving architecture that is far wider and more inclusive. And finally, the Central Asia-Caucasus Institute has released an American strategy for Greater Central Asia, which we argue that the US and other major powers should fully support this process of regionalism, but as outside facilitators without aspiring to become members. The emerging Greater Central Asia institutions should remain free of external interference. So, we are seeing this institutionalization of Greater Central Asia in working level consultations across a range of sectors, the regularization of meetings, and a first cautious extension of cooperation into security matters. What began as episodic presidential dialogue is evolving slowly and steadily into a genuine regional architecture, and the progress is not happening in a vacuum. It draws on the steady continuity of regional efforts since the 1990s, detailed by Dr. Kushkumbayev, and the broadening of diplomatic engagement as Mongolia pivots highlights. So with that, let us begin, and I will turn it over to Dr. Kushkumbayev to share his reflections on Central Asia Union experience in the past and the lessons for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you very much to organizers. I am honored to be here and participate in this very important event. Briefly, my paper is about the lessons that are important to learn from the early integration experience in Central Asia. The experience of early cooperation during and after the collapse of the Soviet Union is important for the current stage of cooperation and the future of Central Asia. Central Asian countries tried to work together. but they had a big problem. They needed to cooperate because of shared Soviet system like water and energy systems. But at the same time, each country wanted to be fully independent. This made regional integration very difficult. Some cooperation worked. For example, countries worked together to save the Aral Sea. But most big ambitious projects failed. Why? Because countries didn't want to give power to regional institutions. They wanted to keep control inside their own countries. The personal relationships between leaders also played a big role. I mean, first of all, the relatively big countries, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Their different views later caused disagreements. Outside powers like Russia and China also influenced the region. Sometimes they pushed their interests. For example, after 2005, regional countries, Central Asian countries, turned to Russia and joined a Russian-led organization, the Eurasian Economic Community. Was it forced or was it a choice? I think it was a forced choice. Perhaps another mistake was simply copying the European experience at the beginning. The agreement on the 4 freedoms required a lot of work and preparations. Central Asia did not have the same conditions. No open economies in the beginning, no strong democracies, and including the culture of the separation of power. So many agreements were signed, but they were not real. They looked good on paper, but didn't work in practice. And today the biggest risk is repeating the same mistakes. Leaders still talk about unity, but without strong institutions, nothing will last. A better way is to start small, create strong, useful projects that solve real problems. Like, for instance, I mentioned already water or transport issues. This should have real power and clear rules. Step by step, this can build trust and real cooperation, not just words. The basic contradiction between the shared Soviet infrastructure and the new goal of national independence was not just a challenge, it was the main problem that made regional integration in Central Asia very difficult from 1990 to 2005. During the 15 years, this deep lack created a built-new weakness that was made worse by other internal and external pressure. On one hand, the need for cooperation was clear and urgent. The economies of the region were closely connected with shared energy systems, transport routes, and pipelines, all built without thinking about future borders. After the collapse of Soviet Union, this system broke apart, causing a serious economic crisis. Working together became a matter of survival. One of the strongest reasons to cooperate was water management. The Aral Sea disaster caused by overuse of the 2 rivers during the Soviet time, 2 main rivers, Amudarya and Sirdarya, was a shared environmental crisis. It needed a joint response even before the USSR officially ended. Later, this led to the creation of the Interstate Commission for Water Coordination and the International Fund for Saving the Aral Sea. Early examples that cooperation was possible when the problem was urgent and shared. On the other hand, each country's main political goal was to build its own independent nation state. This goal often weakened the regional commitments needed for real integration. My paper clearly says that national sovereignty always came first, and this was a constant dilemma and challenge. The leaders who came from the Soviet system but wanted to move away from it focused on strengthening their power and building separate national identities. So even though they signed agreements like the single economic space for freedoms, their actions at home often went in the opposite direction. For example, even after creating a free trade zone, many countries kept customs barriers and non-tariff restrictions to protect their industries. This directly contradicted the promises of integration. However, even many politicians still believe that high trade tariffs and duties will make their countries great. Also, the Central Asian countries were unwilling to give real power to regional institutions. As a result, bodies like Executive Committee had no real authority and couldn't enforce decisions. So, even though the practical need for integration was real, it was always less important than the political goal of building strong, independent states. This created a cycle. Leaders made big promises, but didn't follow through because they were not ready to give up any sovereignty to make those promises work. This is what my paper about in briefly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kushkumbayev. It provides such a valuable perspective, reminding us that the efforts that we see today are not really emerging from a blank slate, that there is some institutional memory, even if it's unspoken. It does run deep, but also it provides a cautionary tale. As I mentioned, external pressures and premature overreach have derailed past efforts, so the importance of regional ownership could really not be clearer. So now I would like to turn it over to Ambassador Chimguundari to talk to us about Mongolia's pivot to Central Asia and the Caucasus.
Thank you so much. I guess we have two people with very difficult surnames in this panel. So my fellow Tufshin Zaya and I wrote this piece about Mongolia's pivoting to Central Asia and Caucasus. This is the logical continuation of Mongolia's third neighbor policy. The third neighbor policy is foundational to Mongolia's foreign policy, since we're landlocked between Russia and China, the big two neighbors. We've always aimed at achieving diplomatic balance. The third neighbor policy includes countries like the US, UK, India, Japan, EU, South Korea, Turkey, and increasingly lately regional actors like Central Asia, Kazakhstan, and other Central Asian countries. Our pivot to Central Asia and Caucasus is driven by a mix of strategic necessity and opportunity, with the turbulence especially surrounding Russia and a more assertive China. Mongolia is looking to diversify our foreign relations and economic ties. And Central Asia and Caucasus are natural partners historically, culturally, and economically. These regions are experiencing their own transformations, so it makes sense for Mongolia to engage more deeply and proactively. And from what Dr. Kushkumbayev presented in his paper, we can see some partnership and cooperation and attempts for regional integration has been done among those countries, but I guess Mongolia is now a newcomer joining this unit. This pivot to Central Asia and Caucasus also helps us increase the trade between those countries, between Mongolia and those countries, especially the trade between Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan has been increasing lately with export of Mongolian meat products to those countries. What's exciting is also how multidimensional this new trade dynamic is. We're seeing movement in energy cooperation, transport and logistics, and even education and cultural exchange. For example, Mongolia has an eye on building up connectivity via rail through Kazakhstan, through Europe, toward Europe. There's also growing interest in food exports, renewable energy projects, and digital commerce. It's more than numbers, it's about setting pathways, we think. And lately, many countries are trying to rely less on Russia and China. Mongolia is being deliberate about opening new corridors, not just physically, but diplomatically and economically. And that's why we argue in our article that the Middle Corridor, for instance, offers an alternative route for trade through Central Asia, through Caucasus to Europe. Our strategy is less about moving away from Russia and China outright and more about diversifying our partnerships. Mongolia is also taking serious efforts to lead this change through numerous high-level visits. The President Hurulsuk's recent visit to Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan in 2024 resulted in numerous bilateral agreements which opened up a lot of economic partnership opportunities. There's even talks about creating a trilateral platform among Mongolia, Central Asia, and Caucasus to coordinate better. Mongolia's democracy is often understood as unique. It means that we operate on transparency, public accountability, and relatively free media. Speaking of relatively free media, I can also state that the Eurasian Economic Committee cooperation has also been kind of imposed on us, but thanks to the free media, we are trying to balance this attempt. What else? And at the end, finally, we're arguing that Mongolia can be a bridge for regional integration in among these regional countries of CAMCA. A few years ago, that idea felt mostly symbolic, but today it's gaining more traction. Think of a logistics chain where Mongolian rail networks link up to Central Asian trade corridors, or joint cultural events that blend Mongolian, Kazakh, and Georgian traditions. We could see energy cooperation, tech startup exchanges, even joint educational programs. The bridge metaphor could become a very tangible set of relationships and infrastructure connecting vastly different parts of Eurasia. And Dr. Kushkumbayev also mentioned in his presentation that there's also a possibility of cooperation in environmental field. So I believe it's not in our paper, but we could have included that as well. The environmental cooperation can also be one of areas of cooperation among those countries, and one of our Mongolia's pivot to Central Asia and Caucasus.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. A lot of vivid examples and new initiatives that you described, and I think we've also been hearing that today through many of the sessions, on less on an institutional level, but on the informal level, the ways in which cooperation is increasing. But we got to still work on those flights, I think. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Central Asia-Caucasus Institute's paper, American Strategy for Greater Central Asia. This was something that we wrote for American policymakers, Congress, the National Security Council, the State Department, Department of Defense, and others. And so I'm reporting on the recommendations we came up with here, so you can see the sort of strategic thinking that the Central Asia-Caucasus Institute tries to offer to U.S. decision makers. And these are just recommendations that we hope the U.S. government will take up, but we don't have control over that. So the current reality, from a US perspective, we see the CAMCA region as having sort of a strategic orphan status. We see a bunch of disconnected projects from different agencies, individual programs and initiatives without an overall coordination or clear strategic direction. And so we emphasize a lot in the paper that projects are not an overall strategy. So our fundamental proposition, which will not be a surprise to anyone, is that we try to shift US thinking about the region to this emerging collective region, Greater Central Asia, with its own shared interests and, most importantly, own power of agency. And it's sort of, again, highlighting the connective tissue that attaches Asia to Europe through energy, trade, transport, and resources. So number one, regional definition. That's the inclusive definition of the greater region, including the 5 Central Asian states, Azerbaijan, but also Mongolia, Georgia, Armenia, and eventually also Afghanistan. We strongly support the emergence of exclusive region-wide structures, which are, as I've mentioned multiple times, and Fred would have me highlight again, formed and controlled by the interests of Greater Central Asians themselves without US meddling or outside meddling, and without external interference or demands from other large powers to participate. So why the reframing matters for the United States? The strategic benefits are a stable and self-organizing Greater Central Asia as a bulwark for sovereignty, economic development, and resilience in a contested geopolitical space. New opportunities for manufacturing, trade, energy, connectivity, all which will heighten the region's ability to shape its relations with all outside powers, and the emergence of Greater Central Asia as an institutionalized world region can be a stabilizing force for Eurasia. Also, we heard a lot in previous administrations, I think still unclear in the current one, about the connection to Asia pivot, and a focused strategy for Greater Central Asia must be central to any pivot to Asia, not independent or divorced from it. If pivoting to Asia mistakes Greater Central Asia as some sort of distant flank, it's going to miss opportunities for enhancing US competitive advantage in the region. So we came up with 6 pillars as part of our recommendations. Number 1, institutional leadership. That is a bureaucratic recommendation for the US government that they create a special presidential envoy for Greater Central Asia to be added to the National Security Council, with also unique analytical and operational groupings at key institutions like the Department of State, DoD, and Commerce. Commercial engagement, so focused attention on championing US private sector interests in the region. Commerce is an area that the US can be quite successful in, and Greater Central Asia is a vibrant consumer space, and many countries have large and growing populations. So the specific recommendation is to create a Greater Central Asia Business Council at the Department of Commerce with presence in the US and each Greater Central Asia country. Third, counterterrorism cooperation. We can enhance counterterrorism efforts by engaging the states of Greater Central Asia in close cooperation, which is and has been a key American national security interest. And this strategy particularly engages Afghanistan within the organic context of Greater Central Asia. So that's an opportunity to impede negative trends there. Fourth, a regional security framework. So this is promoting coordination and integration among the region's military and national security professionals. The US military has long been one of America's most effective institutions for engaging foreign security elites through socialization. Number 5, allied cooperation, which is to create a strategic multiplier effect by cooperating with allies who also have aligned interests in Greater Central Asia, Europe, India, Turkey, Japan, perhaps Gulf countries. And 6, a communication strategy. I think we've heard a lot about this throughout many sessions, and more emphasis needs to be paid there from region internal region communication strategies. But from a US perspective, beyond simply delivering information into a digital media environment that has a lot of alternative narratives, maybe from the north and from the south, and the objective should be to explain American interests, motives, and visions effectively while exposing the fallacies of US competitors. And our approach to regional development would be that the US should staunchly approve and support inter-regional coordination and integration, but not interfere with development of region-wide institutions or seek to dominate them. And let's see, implementation. So we think that the US has many competing strategic priorities, limited resources, limited attention, but gaining considerable advantage for the US and Greater Central Asia seems possible and at an acceptable cost through strong implementation and good decision making. So in conclusion, our strategy calls for carving the region out of outdated intellectual, institutional, and perceptional conventions and recognizing Greater Central Asia as the vital connective tissue of Eurasia, home to significant US interests and increasingly attractive commercial opportunities. And the first step is to put a comprehensive strategy in place for Greater Central Asia that welcomes regional self-determination while advancing American interests through principled engagement and strategic patience. So with that, I want to turn to my fellow panelists to ask, we've talked a lot about grand visions and an optimistic view for the future, but what impediments do we see and where should we be cautious in the short term? It's always easy to, and maybe Dr. Kushkumbayev could talk a bit about some of the historical impediments, but now is also a unique time in world geopolitics, and there's some great shifts, so that to me seems like there's great opportunity, but also potentially a great challenge. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Laura, for this great question. Yes, first of all, our societies, I mean in Central Asian countries and our elites should learn the historical background, because Central Asian integration process was, and these lessons from the past conclude that the several different reasons was influence to the regional process, regionalism. Not only the one big issue, for example, relationship between countries or between presidents. It's also combination of factors, external pressure, internal situation. Previously, before lunch, our Uzbek colleague mentioned about the differences in economic level between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan's policy, internal policy, based on the strong control, economic control, and Kazakhstan moved to more liberal economy with privatization, etc. And this lack caused later big differences between countries, and we should learn, but we should synchronize our efforts. The regional country should synchronize efforts in economic and political, and look in the one side. For example, if we moved forward and go ahead, we should do it, if possible, with coordination. But in early stage of integration, we put big, ambitious projects and goals. I mentioned already about the 4 freedoms and European experience, but now, after the 35 years, our countries moved more carefully, but more important, focused on the real, maybe not big, not so ambitious projects, but step by step we can move to our shared goals. Big question is, I think it's, can be regionalism in Central Asia without institutionalization? What's a big question? Because in first, our experience, our integration process was without Turkmenistan. Only 4 countries participated in shared regional institutions. And 5 countries, then when Russia joined in 2004, after 1 year, our integration organization died. It's bit lessons from the past. But now we're 5 countries and moved slowly, but if we synchronized our efforts, I think we can achieve our short-term and middle-term goals.
Thank you. Ambassador?
So what are the impediments? I think, of course, I agree with Dr. Kushkumbayev that apart from external influences, we lack institutional structure. We see that there's an institutional structure among Central Asian countries, among Caucasus, but not an institutional structure that comprises all those countries together. And every time we try to come up with any institutional ideas, these tend to be kind of dictated or taken over by our big neighbors. And apart from that, I think another impediment is the lack of connectivity. The easiest thing when we try to connect with those countries in Central Asia and Caucasus, we only have 1 flight going directly from Kazakhstan to Mongolia. We don't have enough, and there's even not enough connectivity among the Central Asian and Caucasus countries. Like when you travel from Georgia to Armenia or Kazakhstan, it takes a lot of time, and it's not that easy as when you travel from Mongolia to China or from Mongolia to Korea or other places. And also another impediment, in my view, is probably a lack of, not probably lack, but a little competitive advantage that those countries have. And I think this economic growth and economic might is very important for regional integration.
Thank you. So I have a bunch of questions I can ask, but I did want to give the audience an opportunity if we had anybody who had a burning question on institutionalization in the CAMCA region. No? Oh, right here.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the fruitful presentation. I'm Fayaz from Afghanistan. My question is from Sir, Kazakhstan. You know that the CARIC institution is one of the, regional institution which is working mostly for connectivity and regionalism. What do you think, Mongolia also being a part of the CARIC plus many other Central Asian, will this CARIC will be, capable of bringing connectivity between the region, within a short period of 3 to 5 years. As recently, I was in Pakistan in a CARIC connectivity program, and there was lots of, researchers from Central Asia and Mongolia also. What I saw the influence of countries like China and the institution, as you now refer to the, Russia also. So when institutional building is, happening like this, will it be effective to do, regionalism, institutional building for regionalism and connectivity in the Central Asia and Caucasus? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. It's very important for future of our region and regionalism as well. Of course, outside powers influenced on Central Asia. It was, for example, in Russia and China, sometimes it's pressure, and sometimes it's the invitation to join the other projects. For example, you mentioned SCOs, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, into Russia-led Eurasian organization. Between the two great powers, like Mongolia also, because many similarities, many the same challenges we faced in Central Asia. And the countries, the same weight, like Mongolia, all Central Asia, 5 countries, Afghanistan, include Azerbaijan, South Caucasus, should be more close to each other. Because in this geopolitical environment, we should strengthen our regional connectivity and regionalism. Because if we have strong regional institution or regionalism as well, we're supporting and make more strengthen our independence, sovereignty also. South Asia, Afghanistan is a very important country to Central Asian region as a gateway to the South Asia. It's obvious. Recently in Uzbekistan was the first conference, Termes dialogue, emphasizing to the reconnect our regions, and we are welcomed warmly Afghan side to rejoin to Central Asian connectivity, because this not only about the new routes, new connectiveness, it's about the re-engage historical ties between our countries, Afghanistan and Central Asian countries, because it's exist before in 19th and before in the 18th centuries, and from the Babur time, it's we're rejoining, reconnecting our countries now. It's obvious we should looking without the barriers, because these barriers built in the past time, in Soviet time, when big powers was rivalry side in this geopolitical chess, but we not a chess for the outside powers. We can build our strong regional. Thanks.
Yeah, and interesting to note the Russian and Chinese response to the Termes dialogue, which was quite dramatic because I think they find it a bit concerning when institutionalization is happening regionally, that they're maybe not a part of.
Yes, you're right. I heard from the Chinese colleagues concerns about regionalism and this way to the south, because we're diversifying our external ties, our transport routes. It's logical development for us, for our countries. And in this conference participated one scholar from Russia, the same feelings like Chinese, but in the where will turn Central Asian countries in the nearest future and the foreseeable future. It's a question for our big neighbors. Thanks.
So just to wrap up the session, I'm going to pose just one final question for you. Oh, we'll also take an audience question. So we'll take both questions together. Oh, 2 audience questions. Okay, right over here, and then we'll wrap it up with that.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good evening. My name is Chimguundari. I'm a 2025 fellow this spring. So when we were in DC this spring, it was interesting times. And as I was saying last night, it's also interesting times to be here in Ulaanbaatar, because I was listening to the parliamentary session on the putting the cabinet members. I think it was the day most of the CAMCA fellows came to Mongolia. And during that session, COP17 was one of the topics for sure. And COP17, Mongolia is going to host COP17 on desertification and land degradation. And so my question is for Ambassador Chimguundari. During the parliamentary session, they were saying that this is not about the Democratic Party, this is not about the Mongolian People's Party, this is about Mongolia. Like, this is going to be like the one thing that we shouldn't be we should be non-partisan. So my question is, CAMCA region share many similarities. Like we have, environmental challenges such as air climes, water scarcity, land use pressures. So my question is, how do you think CAMCA network can strategically leverage COP17 to present a unified voice or regional agenda? Because it's a big deal for Mongolia and for the CAMCA region as well, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And I'm going to collect this question and then let you answer them together.
Joanna Lillis, Central Asia correspondent for The Economist. You've talked a lot in a very interesting way about how the big powers in the region tend to present challenges to regional integration. We might even say sabotage it. So I wonder if the speakers have any actual practical solutions or suggestions as to how the CAMCA region countries can prevent that from happening as they try to integrate now. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So practical advice on dealing with great power potential sabotage and how can CAMCA help leverage COP17? And if you wanted to say one thing about what you see your greatest practical near-term opportunity for cooperation, maybe just one thing you want to highlight for the group that we can just sort of star. Ambassador.
Thank you. That's a great question, and I'm living under my head of COP17 prep office director every day. I was happy to take that hat off, but you're bringing it back. But yeah, definitely COP7, the UNCCD COP17 is something where Mongolia needs to have a national consensus. I agree with that 200%. And on how CAMCA region can leverage COP17, I think the COPs, usually the environmental COPs, people kind of fail to distinguish between climate COP, biodiversity COP, and the desertification COP. Those are called the 3 Rio Conventions. People mostly know about the climate COP, which is the big COP that gave us the Paris Agreement. Now this COP is having their 30th session in Brazil this year in November. The COP17 that we are hosting in Mongolia in 2026 is the Desertification COP. So this is a COP, Conference of the Parties of the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, that is held every 2 years in comparison to the Climate COP that is held every year. So we see a lot of interest on environmental agenda within the region. For example, the COP29 of the UNFCCC, the Climate COP, was hosted by Azerbaijan in Baku last year. The Biodiversity COP17 is coming back to the region again. It's going to be hosted in Armenia. And the Desertification COP17 is coming to Mongolia. And this is the first time that Mongolia will be hosting a big global event of this size. And I think CAMCA countries can leverage this opportunity to enhance our cooperation in the environmental field and land degradation or a land restoration field, because we all have very similar ecosystems. And during the COP17, and I think that would be my answer to your last question, the one thing that I want to, the one message that I want to give to you to build on would be that Mongolia is preparing to launch a global rangelands initiative in 2026 during COP17. So it's going to be an opportunity for all your countries to join the global rangelands initiative, but it's only in the preparation phase. So we're now talking and working with the UNCCD Secretariat to prepare the concept note, and it's mostly it's called a global initiative, but it's about rangelands. So I guess everybody in the CAMCA region, every country in the CAMCA region has rangelands, and it would be very relevant for us to join that initiative. And on the second question, the practical advice on how to address the influence from big powers. I guess this is the effort that we are doing. Mongolia's pivot to Central Asia is an answer to that question. So we can pivot to each other, and we can strengthen our regional cooperation in order to face that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you for your both questions. I think we, in CAMCA region, and this include these conferences, we can build a networking. By building a network of strong practical institutions, the region can create real interdependence and trust. What's interdependence between not only leaders or countries, between societies, first of all, in a broader region. And second question, this would be a much stronger base for cooperation than relying only on the goodwill of political leaders, because our cooperation, I mean, inside the 5 Central Asian countries, based first of all on the goodwill of the leaders. We should build semi-structured, semi-institutionalized networking between countries. I think this careful step-by-step approach directly solves the 2 biggest problems of the past: the lack of enforcement and the refusal to share authority. That's why I mentioned already about the case of the Turkmenistan, and now we do our best, I mean, in the governmental level to involved Turkmen side in region project. But Turkmen side, for example, already says, okay, but without any conditions, but not with the inspiring to be really part of the regional networking. Only in practical, for example, in transport or water issues can we participate. But we, first of all, it depends on the political willingness of the government, and we're trying to involve all countries to the regional process. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank my distinguished panelists, and also, again, just recommend please check out the papers and provide your feedback. We like all critical and positive thoughts, and thank you all for attending. Thank you.